Welcome, everybody, to A to Z Sports Notre Dame. We are live here on a wonderful Wednesday afternoon at 12 o'clock Eastern Time, National Signing Day, which is a very interesting day for the Notre Dame 2026 recruiting class. And a quick congratulations to all the outstanding football players, Notre Dame fandom and national fandom alike, that were able to sign their national letter of intent today to continue their football careers on the college level. It's a great day, and I think that we lose a little bit of that just appreciation with Hayes Fawcett tweeting out flip season and all those types of things. We forget about that these kids have been working very, very hard for years and years and years to be able to play on the college level. So shout out to everyone that is signing today, and we'll obviously have a big Notre Dame slant on that conversation this morning as well. If you are live with me on YouTube, on Facebook, or on Twitter, thank you so much for joining. I would recommend, though, YouTube as the preferred way to communicate. It is a mailbag today, a little bit midweek mailbag special here on the channel, specifically because we don't have a game this week, so have to be a little bit more creative with the types of content. And also, I plan on possibly doing a reaction show either on Saturday night after the games are over or Sunday night, depending on how the college football playoff bracket officially plays out. So a lot to talk about here. If you all want to, already have several comments in the section with questions that I've starred. If you want to put a mailbag emblem next to them, a little emoji, or if you just want to put mailbag in the front, or if you just put a question mark at the end, either way we'll be able to easily decipher what is the question, what is not. But I would definitely go over to the YouTube channel. If you are on any of the other social media platforms, make sure that like and subscribe to the channel, though. It was very much appreciated as we continue forward. Notre Dame regular season is over, 10-2 overall record, hoping that it is enough to get them a college football playoff berth for the second straight year. So if you want to talk about college football playoffs, if you want to talk about the year in review of the regular season, if you want to talk about the recruiting class in 2026 that all signed today, if you want to ask me what I ate for Thanksgiving dinner, it doesn't matter. Just send me, let me know the questions that you have in the chat, and we will get to as many in the next hour-ish that we can. So without further ado, folks, let's get into some of these questions here. We'll start with Irish, Gordy, and Knott, who had a few before we even started today. At the bottom here, IGK says, who has the highest ceiling on offense and defense in the 2026 class? I'm going to put out, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to it today just because there's some pressing coaching decisions from a national perspective that are still there. There's still some stuff that I'm still writing as far as some reaction stuff to the college football playoff that just went on Tuesday night. But at some point this week, I will be doing some superlative conversations to the 2026 class. Not grading necessarily, just talking about, and this is a good segue to this question, asking highest ceilings. Maybe I'll do a floor conversation. Maybe I'll do some comparisons to former Notre Dame players or former NFL college players. I want to do some of this stuff this week. So I love that we were talking some conversation points and some superlatives for the 2026 class. So highest ceiling on offense, and just kind of run through the offense in my head, and hopefully I don't forget anybody because I actually don't have the lists in front of me. So I am just going to go off the top of the dome here. So Noah Grubbs, quarterback. Running backs, Javion Osborne, Jonas Walton. Wide receivers, you have Caden Finley, you have Braden Robinson, you have Devin Fitzgerald, you have Dylan Faison. I feel like I'm forgetting one wide receiver. You have Ian Premer, tight ends. You have Preston Frizel at tight ends. You have Grayson McHugh. You have Charlie Tom on the offensive line. You have Tyler Merrill. You have, oh man, I just went blank here. You have Patrick. What is Patrick's first name? Gosh, I should really just pull this up. I should really just pull this up here. Sorry, folks. I thought I was about to run through that off the top of the dome without any points, and I was pretty dang close, but the offensive line tripped me up here. So Sullivan Garvin's one as I'm pulling up the list just to make sure I'm not missing anybody here. All right, so we offensive lineman, making sure I get over. Ben Nichols is one that I spaced on there. I said Gray McHugh. I said Tyler Merrill. Gregory Patrick, Gregory's first name, is there. Kane Finley I got. Bubba Frazier I got. Braden Robinson. I think I got everybody else outside of, Sullivan Garvin. Yep, okay, I got everybody. The one that I missed up on was Ben Nichols. So highest upside. I think this is a fascinating one because difference between floor and ceiling is the floor conversation is kind of just being being college ready, a guy that you maybe can depend on year one. A ceiling conversation is, hey man, by year 3, this kid could be a All-American. This kid could be a outstanding starter. This kid could be a draft pick. I don't know. But I would say this. I will say it. I think EduCate just put my point in here for a second, or my pick. Grayson McHugh would be my guy. And that, of course, he's out of LaSalle College, he actually plays his ball here in Pennsylvania, about like 45 minutes for me. I'm a South Jersey guy, so right over the bridge, about 45 minutes away from me is where Grayson and Joey O'Brien both play high school football. Grayson McHugh, I think, has the highest upside of anybody on the offensive side of the football. And I think Javion Osborne has high upside. I think that wide receivers wise, Bubba Frazier might have the highest upside, although I would say that Caden Finley has easily the highest floor comparatively to a couple of the guys. Ian Premer, I think, has incredibly high upside. So just kind of talking it out loud, IGK, I think the two guys are Grayson McHugh and Ian Premer for me. I think that those are the guys. Premer is out of the state of Kansas, considered by some to be the top overall tight end in the 2026 class nationally. I'm going to go with McHugh, though, because McHugh, when Notre Dame really started getting on him, McHugh was about 6'7", 270 pounds, and he was blowing up on the trail. But when Notre Dame first offered him, he was considered a 3-star by many. Now he's considered a high-end guy. Even some people have him as a 5-star player. And he has now started to really fill out, which has been the kind of the thing that you wanted to see with him. He was always a really good athlete. There was never any question. He has really good length, but it was about just filling out his frame. Some people have him listed right around 300 pounds now. So he has quickly been able to develop his frame. That kid, I think, is a future starting left tackle at the University of Notre Dame. That's what a potential, and this is a deep projection because you're projecting for 3 to 4 years. But that's, in my opinion, what a first-round offensive tackle looks like in high school. Like, that's what he looks like. Now, developmental track, you have to see how he handles the weight room and handling the just developments, nutrition-wise, all that type of stuff, how much the game slows down on the college level. But I really do think that Grayson McHugh has some crazy upside. But I would just feel remiss if I didn't say Ian Premer, too. Like, so Grayson McHugh is my pick offensively, but I'm going to send a shout out to Ian Premer as well, because Premer is 6'5", about 225 is what he listed. If you watch him in the state of Kansas, he is playing Wildcat quarterback. He's getting jet sweeps. He's playing in line at tight end. He's playing wide receiver. He also plays on the defensive side of the ball. He's one of the kids that's just kind of a natural athlete and can do a little bit of everything. And I mean, he has the look of the next great Notre Dame tight end. There's some good tight ends on the roster right now. Like, if Cooper Flanagan is healthy next year, I think that he could be a very good player for Notre Dame, very important player for Notre Dame as an all-around player. I think James Flanagan has nice upside at the tight end position. Jack Larson, I think, has a solid floor. But when you look at the all-around upside and the ability to potentially become a high NFL draft pick, I think Premer has every tool in the toolbox. So Premer, shout out, but Grayson McHugh is my pick there. Defensively, I'm going to try it again. Probably going to frustrate myself, but I'm going to go off the top of the dome. Let's just work through the defensive class. So defensive line, you have Ebenezer Ewutade, you have Rodney Dunham, you have Elijah Golden, you have Tiki Hola. On the linebacker spot, you have Thomas Davis Jr., you have Jacoby Clapper. Corners, you have Aiden Pouncey, Kari Adams, Chaston Smith. At safeties, you have Joey O'Brien, you have Nick Reddish. I think I hit everyone. Hopefully. I'm going to be really upset if there's somebody that I missed there. But, yeah, I'm still going to go. And some people are talking about Premer's, Premer offensively, defensively. He could do everything on the high school level, no doubt. So with that defense class in mind, the easy answer for some is probably going to be Rodney Dunham or Joey O'Brien, and I would not push back on either one of those. Beefeater, I see your comments in the chat. I will get to a couple of your questions, sir. Such a troll. I said it in a very positive manner. I like trolls occasionally. So Rodney Dunham, I think, has a very strong conversation because Rodney Dunham is 6'4", 225 pounds, but he's going to be 250 easy. He's got length. He's explosive. And the cool part about Rodney Dunham, and he's out of the state of North Carolina for people that don't follow recruiting that closely, out of Myers Park. He's an incredibly talented player. Myers Park has a couple kids that signed national letter of intent to high Power 4 teams today. He is a guy that was hurt a decent amount of this season and was banged up a little bit as a junior as well. Nothing crazy that you're going to be really worried long term. But the fact that he's missed time and he still flashes and does some of the things on the field that he does, that gives me high optimism that I really think that Rodney Dunham could be a star player if he is developed properly, man. Like, he looks the part. And if he's another kid that can come in and can acclimate well to the strength and conditioning program, to the nutrition program, all that type of stuff, I'd be surprised if we don't at least see him as a freshman. Not necessarily saying he'll start as a freshman, but see Rodney Dunham, I could definitely see it. Joey O'Brien is the most fascinating player in this class because you could legitimately play him at safety, corner, or wide receiver if you felt like it. You could also probably play him at nickel, similar to like how you use a Kyle Hamilton in nickel. Like, you could do some of those things as well. So I look at him and I say those are probably the two easy ones. I would probably defer to, man, I'd probably go Dunham between the two just because there is a conversation point of like what's more important, a high caliber edge rusher or high caliber safety. Both are extremely important to defense depending on how you play it. But I do think that the edge position is a spot where if you have difference maker as pass rushers, guys that can set the edge, I think Dunham probably has slightly more upside as far as like the importance that he brings to defense. But another quick shout out, and I know I'm cheating a little bit, IGK, for your question, but another quick shout out to Corey Adams, man. I feel like some people take him for granted a little bit. That kid, who was rated as a top 35 player by at least one platform, that kid has an argument today as the most physically gifted corner that Mike Mickens has signed at Notre Dame. And that's a big statement because Mike Mickens has signed Leonard Moore. He has signed Benjamin Morrison. He signed Christian Gray, who, although Christian hasn't played up to the caliber of those two players I mentioned before, still a very physically impressive kid. He signed Dallas Golden. He signed Mark Zachary. Like, he has signed some very talented corners over the last few years. And I think Corey Adams, there is a very strong conversation to if this is the most talented cover man. Now, that doesn't mean that he'll be better than those guys because there's a lot more than just straight up physical traits that are needed to be a really good football player. But in terms of just length / movement skills / everything involved, upside of frame, all that type of stuff, man, I really like Corey Adams a lot. So those would be my top three. If I had to rank them, I would probably go Rodney Dunham, Joey O'Brien, Corey Adams. But I think Corey Adams is closer to number 2 than maybe some people would give him credit for. That kid is a really talented athlete. I'm going to jump around some people. We had 11 questions already in the chat here. Again, folks, if you're joining me first time on the mailbag, questions in the chat. If you could just give me a question mark at the end or a mailbox emoji, something for me just to differentiate, that would be really appreciated, as I am the not only host and talent, but I'm also the producer today. So I gotta do everything. Gotta do everything on the back end here. We had a question from Holiday Everyday 550. Holiday Everyday, thank you so much for the question. Appreciate you. Do you feel this is a top 5 class? Yes. Yeah. And I think Rivals has it, and the day's not over, obviously. So there's signings and potential flips that will happen that will change the overall landscape to a degree. But yeah, they have them as like the number 2 class right now. And this is the best Notre Dame class under Marcus Freeman and the best one that they've signed in a very, very long time. And I think the key here for me, Holiday Everyday, is that it's a complete class too. You have star power and you didn't miss out on needs. So that's why, and we always talk about like comparatively to Brian Kelly, because there's a couple of Brian Kelly classes that were very highly ranked, but then when you kind of really decipher it, and I remember talking to Brian Driscoll about this when I used to work at Irish Breakdown, there was a couple classes that, yes, they had some really talented players and they had really good classes overall, but when you look at it, there were still holes. Like they didn't get enough at this position, or they completely didn't even get anybody at X position, right? And this class, I think, is so good because you have the stars. You have Rodney Dunham. You have Joey O'Brien. I think Javion Osborne and Caden Finley could be stars. Grayson McHugh. Like, you have the guys that would be quote-unquote high caliber, top 50, 5-star-ish level players. Corey Adams throw into that conversation as well. But the difference is, not only does it have that top level talent, it also has depth. Like, you have 2 running backs. You have a big wide receiver class. You have a huge secondary class. You have a complete offensive line class. You have a complete defensive line class. You have a 3 technique, a nose tackle, and you have 2 defensive ends. Like, you have a complete class. The only one that you could maybe argue that isn't complete is linebacker, but Notre Dame was totally fine with only taking 2 with how they've recruited linebacker over the last few years, right? And Notre Dame is mostly a 2 linebacker system. Like, they play some 4-3 personnel at times to some heavier personnel, offensive personnel. But for the most part, they have 2 linebackers on the fields at most of the time. So that fact, this is a complete Notre Dame class. So yeah, I think it's a top 5 class, because when you determine classes for me, it is that high-level talent combined with the depth and hitting marks that you need to hit. I think that is absolutely a top 5 class, 100%. And if Rivals is right, and this is the number 2 class, I remember when I first started covering Notre Dame recruiting when, oh man, can Notre Dame ever get a number 1 overall class? And at first it's like, going to be tough. In the NIL era, it's going to be tough. You know, we know how recruiting works and how bags are thrown around and all that type of stuff. But Notre Dame's getting dangerously close, doing it the right way. Do these kids make money? Yes. Are they going to get a payout? Yes. Are they going to be under market compared to some other spots though? Yeah. I'll say Joey O'Brien could have signed with Oregon, for instance, and made more money than he's going to make at Notre Dame as a freshman. Could have. That probably would have evened out during his entirety of his career. But as a freshman, Joey O'Brien would have made more money other places. But yet, he chose Notre Dame, which is a testament to Marcus Freeman's, testament to this Notre Dame staff, but also the fact that they are getting players like this, but also not going over the market for that player, quote unquote, is very, very important to continue recruiting to this level. All right, we're going to go to... All right, let's have the conversation. I'm ready. We'll get back to some recruiting talk. And again, folks, you can ask any question to me, and I will answer it. I have no problem answering anything. So if you want to ask about National Signing Day, you want to ask about the College Football Playoff, year in review, if you want to talk about, I had a question about favorite pie on Thanksgiving, like anything is up for conversation. So please put that all in the chat. But we have Patrick James who says, what's your concern level for the playoffs? I have people sending me clips from Joel Klatt and all these other people saying basically Notre Dame's out. And I have a very different perspective than some national folks here. I know some people who come into the chat that aren't Notre Dame fans will say, well, you're biased. Well, maybe, maybe. But here's my perspective, and you tell me if this is biased, okay? My thought process is, and of course, here's what Notre Dame fans are wrestling with. I'm writing an article about this right now. So here's what we're wrestling with. 1, Alabama jumped Notre Dame, and Notre Dame fell to number 10, Alabama at number 9. The other part of the conversation is BYU at number 11 playing in the Big 12 championship game against Texas Tech, and they have an opportunity to maybe jump Notre Dame if they have a big game and win that game against Texas Tech. The other one is the Miami constant conversation. Miami right now is at number 12. If BYU loses and Notre Dame is next to them, there's some people that are theorizing that, hey, now the head-to-head matters more because they are on equal playing fields. Okay, well, let's take this all one step at a time. Okay, one step at a time. It's a great question, Patrick. 1, why did Alabama get moved up after beating a 5-7 Auburn team who has 1 win in the SEC team, 27-20, where you were tied in the fourth quarter? Why? Because, folks, the markets always determine decisions that people make in college football. And all due respect to BYU, and all due respect to even Miami. Like, this is, and I'm saying this, like, I'm not being disrespectful to Miami for a second. People want to see Alabama more than they want to see Miami. They just do. In college football, they do. The big players make money. The committee wants to make money. That wants to make the sport money. They want the viewership to be high, which makes everyone money. They want these things to happen. So why was Alabama put at number 9? In my opinion, it's to create that buffer between 9 and 10, where if Alabama loses to Georgia, they can move back a spot and be, quote unquote, disciplined for losing a game, the extra game, but not disciplined enough because the committee says, and I don't think it's always true, but they say losing a conference championship game isn't held as much against you as losing a regular season game. That's what we're told. So why did they be able to move to 9? Because if they lose the game, I think they'll get pushed back to 10, and Notre Dame potentially moves up to number 9. That's what I think. Some people believe that Alabama will just stay at 9 no matter what because it's not held against them. Well, if that happens, the whole conversation point is BYU, Texas Tech. If BYU loses, to Texas Tech, they will fall out of the 11th spot, and it will not be a conversation between Notre Dame and BYU anymore. Because with the 5 automatic qualifiers from the conference winners, Notre Dame at 10 is the last spot for an at-large that could make the playoffs this year with how everything fell. With the ACC doing what they're doing, with potential 2 group of 5s potentially getting in, like there's a lot that's going to happen here. Whole lot that's going to happen here. And with all of that considered, if Notre Dame beats BYU, I think they're in. And Nate Leafy just said, do you think Notre Dame is in then? Yes, I think Notre Dame's going to be in. Yep. As long as BYU loses to Texas Tech, I think Notre Dame is in. I think there's a chance they might get in even if BYU doesn't. But I think that there's a lot that needs to happen in that scenario, and I don't want to go all the way through that. But yes, as long as BYU loses, they're in. Now, let me give you the doomsday that everyone's trying to paint. And I want to spend a little bit of time on this one. If BYU loses, let's say Notre Dame's at 10 now, and Miami is at 11. Let's say Alabama just stays at 9 for argument's sake. People are now surmising, and I saw Joe Klatt say this on his podcast, that he thinks Notre Dame's out in any way. Either way. If BYU wins, Notre Dame's out. If BYU loses, Notre Dame's out because Miami will now be next to them where the head-to-head is going to be the differentiator. And I think that is the most stupid, asinine conversation that we are having right now. I don't understand it. Here's my thought process. And tell me in the chat if you guys agree with this or you disagree with this. Because I've seen some people argue on both sides, and I just don't understand it. So you're telling me that in order to create these rankings each and every week, and from the beginning, the committee has said Notre Dame is this, Miami is this. And since then, both teams have been winning, and the results and the common opponents they have been relatively the same. Now, we can go into context and look at them deeper and say, like, hey, Miami was tied at Stanford 7-7 at halftime, and we can make arguments in both directions for either team. But you're telling me that Notre Dame, that despite that being the fact, that now that they are directly next to each other, the head-to-head is going to be weighted more than it already has been? It's already baked into the scenarios, into the formula. It's already being considered. This is a part of the criteria already. So what is Notre Dame doing this week? And what is Miami doing this week? They're both off. That's going to change. Where's the new data point here? Nothing has changed. Everything is the same. I don't see how a committee, which I'm sure has a lot of very smart people on it, I don't see how a committee could look at it and say, oh, they're next to each other now. Now we jump Notre Dame. What? Why? Based on what? What is it based on? You're already considering head-to-heads in your formula. You don't have a new data points. There is nothing that changed your opinion this week. Zero. I can't believe that that's going to happen. It doesn't make any sense to me. It makes zero sense to me. Now, if you want to have the conversation, and Miami fans will try to have this, oh, no, they should have been in front of Notre Dame already. Okay, we can have that conversation. I've had that conversation a million times for the last 3 weeks. We can have that conversation if you want. But either way, the key part that you're leaving out here is that they weren't. The committee has already made that decision that Miami is here and Notre Dame is there. And David, and I want to bring up this comment real quick because I think it's a part of why people are feeling this way. David said the committee on this last playoff bracket has become wishy-washy, so I could see them pulling some shady stuff. I don't see how Miami could jump anybody since they haven't moved in 3 weeks. Yeah, And and David, I understand that, right? And if you're, because this is a subjective conversation. It's a subjective conversation, right? They, they, they use different formulas. They use different metrics, all these things to come to their conclusion. But at the end of the day, it is people talking in the room, which have their inherent biases, and this is a subjective conversation, right? So if your worry is that people are going to mess this up, I understand that. But I just don't see how they could justify it. I don't see how they could justify it. If this is what they were planning to do, they would have done it this week, I think. And the conversation point of the committee would have been, we thought about it again, and after having complete regular season results, we think that Miami deserves to be in over Notre Dame because of the head-to-head and a similar resume. I think that would have happened this week. I really, really doubt, and I would find it hard to believe that anything is going to change this week where nobody is playing to say, you know what, actually, Miami should be ahead in Notre Dame. I don't think that's going to happen. And I might end up being very wrong here, but I don't see how they justify it, man. I don't see it. There's going to be, you think there's backlash right now about Alabama jumping, or backlash about Miami's ranking overall? The backlash from the Notre Dame fan base, if they make this switch unjust with no new data, is going to be astronomical. And it should be. You need new information to change opinions. What happened this week? Notre Dame was chilling at home, watching the games, watching the SEC championship, watching the Big 12 championship, watching the ACC, watching all these things. So was Miami. This would be a very different conversation if both teams had an even resume and they played this week and one team won and one team didn't. That is the separation. This has already been baked into the formula. It's already been baked in. So what are we talking about? And this is not a conversation of if Miami should have been here to begin with or Notre Dame should have been here to begin with. I'm not having that conversation right now. My conversation point is that, but this is how it's been. And in order to change things, something different needs to change. Some new information needs to be had. And man, I just don't understand. I don't understand. It would just be, I just don't understand. Man. Because, even with the Alabama thing, I disagree with it, right? I disagree with Alabama jumping Notre Dame, but I think that was a strategic thing on their part. But at least you could say, hey, there was a game that was played. We might think it's ridiculous that they jumped them for being a bad Auburn team, but, at least you could say, hey, but there was a game. They played a game this week. What are you going to lean on? You can't lean on anything, man. But it's a great question. David, I appreciate your perspective there. I appreciate other people's perspectives that that wanted to include the conversation. Greg Gosser says, apologize if I said your last name wrong, Gray. If you want to put a pronunciation in there, I'm going to go with Gosser, though, for now. Alabama jumps Notre Dame because they went on the road to a rivalry game and won by 7, when Notre Dame did the same and won by a lot. Exactly. That's my point, man. That's my point. Stanford is not a good football team. Neither is Auburn. We can have a conversation of, who's better, whatever. We're comparing a 4-8 team versus a 5-7 team. I don't care. I just don't care. I don't care. And they not only did they win by 7, Greg, they were tied in the fourth quarter where they had a little bit of a collapse going, man. Gosh. It's so annoying. So annoying. Thank you for your contribution, though, Greg. I appreciate it. Bernie, I see you put in there as well. I appreciate you guys for including this conversation. Make sure you put your mailbag questions in there, and we will continue to have this conversation, folks. But, Patrick, to your original question on my concern level, I'm not concerned right now. I'm not. On a scale 1 to 10, I'm like a 3, like a 2. I'm not overly concerned right now. Do I have something in the back of my mind that's people are still making this decision, so there could be some subjective weirdo-ness happening? It's always possible, man, but I'm just not concerned about it right now, but we will see. We had Irish, Gordy, and Knott, IGK. I'll go back to some of your recruiting questions as well. Yep, Greg. Auburn 5-7, Stanford 4-8. So not separation there at all. IGK says favorite pie on Thanksgiving. This is the fun stuff I like to have conversations about, man. I'm a football guy, so ask mostly football questions. Well, let's talk about some random stuff at times. So Put in the chat. We'd love to hear from you all. Hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving also. I know we're a little bit past it at this point, but I haven't talked to you all since before Thanksgiving. So hope everybody had a happy Thanksgiving. Apple pie is the go-to and will always be the go-to. I respect other pies. I will eat other pies. But for me, like I like an apple pie with like the streusel topping. I'll even do like an apple crumble. I can do either one of those things. I like that. I like that crisp topping of like it's like flour slash brown sugar, like that thing. Like that thing slaps, man. Like that is my thing. Like I would apple pie. And I'll do apple pie with the what you call it on top and all that stuff. Like that's cool. But the streusel topping is my jam without question. I'll eat a mixed berry pie. I'll eat a blueberry pie. Not really a pumpkin pie guy. I don't really like pumpkin just in general though. Like pumpkin's just not my thing. But I show much respect to the pies. Much respect on the pies. All right. Yeah, and Bernie just added to the conversation we had previously. Auburn missing their head coach and starting quarterback. Never did I see that mid-Bama team jumping the Irish. Bernie, I didn't think it was going to happen either. I didn't. Like because to your point, you are on your second string quarterback. You have an interim coach. I understand it's at Jordan Hare and weird stuff happens in rivalry games. I understand those things, but they were a 1-win football team in the SEC, man, with their backup quarterback and an interim coach. I don't want to hear the excuses on it's a rivalry game. Sure, it's a rivalry game. All right. David Romig, this is an interesting question. And again, put some questions in the chat here. Actually, I want to go here real quick, just talking pies for a second. NH9877 said, made my first pumpkin pie from scratch. My younger son requested it, and since it was his birthday. Well, happy birthday to him. And how was the pie, man? Again, I'm not much of a pumpkin pie guy, but I know people get down with pumpkin for sure. We had David Romig on Facebook who says, can you give me your perspective on Ole Miss? Because Florida State was a perfect 12-0 and got kicked for the playoffs because of their quarterback. So how is Ole Miss not penalized for losing their coach? It's a great question. Here's my perspective on it. So when you think back to the Florida State's team, we're obviously talking about the Jordan Travis injury a few years ago when they were the ACC champs and undefeated and were left out of the 14 playoff. I think first point of contact there is, or first point of conversation is, it was a 14 playoff, so smaller group. If it was a 12 team, they would have been in because they were also a automatic qualifier. So they would have been in this format, one. Two, the Jordan Travis thing was different because we saw multiple games of Florida State without Jordan Travis after the injury. Like it didn't happen just the last game of the season where it was a guessing game. So you knew what that offense looked like with Tate Roddermaker playing quarterback, and it was bad. It was really, really bad. So you had proof of concept with that Florida State team. You had a proof of concept. You knew that team just was not the same, at least offensively. They were not the same without Jordan Travis. They weren't. This Ole Miss team won. It's a different scenario because you have not seen them without Lane Kiffin yet. You have not seen them without Lane Kiffin and a couple of the other coaches that left. So they are a guessing game. It might be the same situation where they're just not suitable anymore without their head coach. Maybe. Or maybe the talent wins out and they win a playoff game or two. So I think that it's the lack of proof of concept to how hard of a knock it is on Ole Miss is one. 14 versus 12 team is the other. And then I think it was a big thing for Ole Miss to be able to get Charlie Weiss Jr. back as an acting offensive coordinator during the playoff stretch. While it's different than a head coach, I do think that they were able to validate and say, like, hey, at least we got our offensive playmaker back. At least we got our defensive playmaker back, who's also now going to be the head coach in Pete Golding. So I think having those two coordinators there on top of the 14 versus 12 team, on top of no proof of concept of how hard it's going to hurt Ole Miss, I think that that's ultimately why they didn't get docked much for the playoff. All right. Hopefully that made sense. I appreciate it. All right. But I also do agree with this from Holiday Every Day. So I do find it odd they moved Ole Miss up. I didn't expect them to drop, though. Yeah, I think that's very interesting is that, I didn't expect Ole Miss to move. Maybe move back a spot because of the defection, but I did not think they would be left out necessarily. But Yeah, it's kind of interesting, man. It's really interesting. It might plant, and David, back to your original question, like it might plants a idea in the back of people's minds, because like this is not the first and only time that this is ever going to happen, right? Like with the calendar the way it is, we're going to see this happen again in the future. So maybe if Ole Miss goes out and just lays an absolute dud, the next time someone loses a head coach, maybe they're penalized a little bit more, you know? So like this might be a putting in the back of the mind for a future decision that happens by the committee. It's always possible. Absolutely. Anytime. All right. Let's go to next question here. All right, we had IGK who asked most underrated player in the 2026 recruiting class for Notre Dame. That is a very interesting question. Most underrated. So on the offense side of the ball, I'm trying to think of who I would call underrated. Like Javion Osborne has a high regard. Jonas Walton's a high regard. Caden Finley's a high regard. Braden Robinson's a pretty high regard. I'd probably go with Dylan Faison a little bit. And it's funny enough, I actually got to speak to Jordan and Jordan and Dylan's dad at a game this year where we were kind of talking about the brothers, and Dylan is like gone very under the radar because he committed to Notre Dame the day after Pot of Gold when he was a sophomore. So like he didn't really experience a ton of the recruiting process. And obviously again, Jordan Faison's little brother, but Dylan is 6'1". He's 180 pounds. He's a much different type of athlete than what Jordan is. And also Dylan is a fantastic lacrosse player. We'll be playing lacrosse for Notre Dame. So I think that he's a very underrated player because I think that most people would attest to this. He's a more talented prospect than Jordan Faison. Like he's more talented. And Jordan Faison right now is your leading receiver in yards and receptions. So I think you can make an argument that Dylan Faison is probably the most underrated player. I would have said Preston Frizel, the tight end out of Central Catholic in Toledo, Ohio, but I don't think he's underrated anymore. I mean, he's ranked as the 8th overall tight end in the Rivals ranking, and I mean that makes sense to me. Like he's been tremendous this year in that league. So he probably was underrated at one point, but I'll still say Dylan Faison. I think Dylan Faison is, I understand they have him as a 3-star, and I'm not even necessarily here to push back necessarily, but I think that kid's going to outplay a 3-star rating that he currently has. So I'll say him on the offensive side of the ball. Defensively, I mean, everyone's pretty highly rated, man. Like Ebenezer is high, Rodney Dunham is high, Elijah Golden's high. I'll probably go with Jacoby Clapper. I mean, he balled out down the stretch of the season for St. X in Cincinnati. He's is he as explosive and dynamic as a couple of the other linebackers that they've had the last couple of years they've signed? Probably not. But that kid is smart, heady. He's 6'2", 220 already. He's going to be 235 in a blink of an eye. I would be not shocked at all if Jacoby Clapper was a good linebacker and a starting linebacker for multiple years for Notre Dame. So I'll go Jacoby Clapper. Shout out to Chaston Smith. I think Chaz is a little bit underrated to a degree as well. But I'll go Jacoby Clapper on the defense side of the football. I will go Dylan Faison on the offense side of the football. Great question, IGK. All right, let's try to get a couple more people in here. All right. Someone had just said, Chris Wall said, was probably said already, but I do think they'll swap Notre Dame and Miami if they're next to each other. But Chris, and I'm not like getting upset or like talking, like I'm genuinely asking your opinion, right? So I don't want it to come off this way. Why? I just want to know why. Like, can you give me a reason in the chat? Because for me, head-to-head's already baked into this conversation. If they were going to be ahead of one another, if Miami was going to be ahead of Notre Dame because of the head-to-head, I think it would have happened on Tuesday night. I just don't understand what has changed. What is going to change from this Tuesday night to Sunday night that is going to make that happen if they're next to each other? I would love your opinion. Please let me know. I really do want it. All right, we had Bernie who said, curious, what do you think of Luke Talich, NFL prospects? I think he's a unicorn. So Luke's a really interesting player because like he's obviously not a starter for Notre Dame at safety, but he's 6'4", 210, and he's a core team special teamer, does everything for Notre Dame special teams. He's been a gunner. He's on every kick coverage team. He obviously has returned a punt for a touchdown, and he's taken a fake punt 84 yards for a touchdown. Like, that is so valuable in the NFL. So I don't even know if Luke necessarily will end up being a draftable player. It depends on how his last year goes next season, if he's able to play a little bit more. Because he's been quietly good on the defense side of the ball for the reps he's gotten. I mean, he's got 3 interceptions and 6 pass breakups. So he's had some production. But I think either way, whether he starts for Notre Dame or not, I think he's a kid that will surprisingly stick in the NFL for a little bit because he's a core team special teamer. He's 6'4", and he can run well, right? So those things, I think, make you money in the NFL. Being able to be a core teamer, I think that is a really, really valuable thing, and I think that also could potentially get you to the next level, man. Like, next level, and be able to stick there ultimately. All right, we had Joe Long, and this is back to the conversation about Miami. Said Miami 2 losses to unranked teams and no conference championship game behind a 7-5 team. For shame, Miami. Said same pod now. So Joe, is that a conversation of like Notre Dame next to Miami? So like they're in the same pod, so it counts more. I just don't believe that's true. Like, why would it count more now that they're right next to each other? I think that was always a part of the conversation. You know, I don't know. I just find it hard to believe that that's going to be somewhat weighted different because they're next to each other. Like, why would it was already a part of it? Like, I don't know. It's part of the recipe, I think. Christian said, I completely agree. It wouldn't make any sense, but the committee hasn't followed any consistent logic all year. If there's a committee that would pull something like that, it'll be this one. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I'm interested to see. I'm interested to see how it plays out and if my logic is correct or if they follow the logic. I don't know, man. It would just be a very hard sell for me to be like, yeah. They're next to each other now, so it counts more. Like, I don't understand how it counts more. It's the same loss, the same situation. Omar just says, think they should get rid of conference championships. Do you agree? Go to top 12 teams. Omar, so yes, I agree that there shouldn't be. It should probably be, if you're going to keep the conference tie-ins, I think that you need to reduce it at least. Maybe go to 4 instead of 5. I think that would help a little bit. Because, like, right now, I mean, again, with the ACC the way it is, I mean, it's conceivable that we're going to get multiple G5 teams into here. Like, guys, can you imagine if and I'm not the bracketologist that some people are, but could you imagine if there was a ACC champ, AAC, not ACC, AC champ, and James Madison make the field, but you leave a Notre Dame or Miami out? Like, a 10-2 Notre Dame and 10-2 Miami team out also? Like, that would be so just like, what, man? I just don't know. I just don't know how that would make any sense. And we had Dinar Curry. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. So Ryan, John Bryce said Notre Dame will fall into some pod and then the head-to-head will come into play. Bryce is very well connected to my community. But my thing is, and I'm not discounting what John said because John Bryce is very plugged in to your points. So if John has a little bit more detail on this than me, I apologize. But the criteria that the committee picks from, and it's supposed to be every week, is strength of schedule, common opponents, head-to-head, and if there's an outside factor that affects your football team, so like a coach being fired or a quarterback being hurt, like that type of thing. So the head-to-head is already in the conversation. Like, it's already in the formula. Am I led to believe that the head-to-head only matters when they're next to each other? Like, they don't, so they don't talk head-to-head at all until they're right next to each other? I just find it hard to believe that that's not a part of the conversation already. I find it hard to believe. Again, I'm not saying John's wrong. I just don't get it. I just don't get it, man. Oh God, I hate it. I hate it. If that happens, I am going to be so perturbed. Like, I am going to be so just angsty and moody. And for the people that like listening to me, like, you are just going to, like, it's going to be a dread with me, man. Like, it is going to be like nails on a chalkboard, miserable. I'm going to be so miserable if that happens. So miserable, man. Ugh. Let's hope that doesn't happen for our enjoyment factor for our mental health factor, for our general enjoyment of being around one another. Please don't let that happen. Please don't let it happen. Going back to IGK, talking to some recruiting. After the 2026 class gets to Notre Dame, will the talent gap be completely closed, or will it take another cycle or two? It depends on what position you're talking about, IGK. Like, for the most part, at several positions, yes, the talent gap will be done. Like, Notre Dame will be as talented as just about anybody in college football at several spots. Like, for me, even losing Jeremiah Love, when you bring in the fact of bringing in Javion Osborne and Jonas Walton from a pure when you look for pure depth perspective, I really do think that the running backs are as good as anybody in college football still, even after losing Jeremiah Love. You might not have the best running back in college football anymore, but you have a room of 4 to 5 guys that can all ball, man. So running back is gone. Tight ends has, like, pure talent, tight end will be gone. It has been gone for a while. Offensive line talent, it's gone. Defensive end talents with Rodney Dunham and Ebenezer Guevutati and then maybe Boubacar Traore, Bryce Young, and all those guys coming back, yes, I think that is gone. Linebacker is gone. Corner is gone. Safety is gone. The one couple spots that I would say is quarterback is gone for now, right? Like, for now, because CJ is very good. So it's gone now. But if we're talking about like a pure room perspective, I like Blake Hebert. I think that Blake Hebert could eventually be a starting quarterback in college football for Notre Dame, but he is a little bit of a project player, right? He's a project. You're bringing in Noah Grubbs, and I'm going to be the negative Nancy for a second, but I have never personally been that high on Noah Grubbs. I think Noah Grubbs is a good quarterback. I don't think he's a plus starter for Notre Dame type of quarterback. So when he gets here, assuming that in my theory here, in my conversation point, is that I think that CJ is as good as just about anyone in college football at quarterback next year. After that, the future conversation is still kind of interesting, right? Like, of a pure depth perspective, because God forbid next year, because let's just assume that Kenny Minchey decides to enter the portal. I don't have intel on that right now, but like, he's going to be a senior next year, right? So we can deduce some things there. If Kenny Minchey leaves, and God forbid something happens to CJ Carr next year where he misses a game or two or whatever, or an extended period of time, how comfortable are you with the depth at that point, right? Like, how comfortable are you with it? Talent-wise, I think you're comfortable with Blake Hebert. But is Blake Hebert going to be a guy that comes in and is a guy that has a somewhat, I don't want to call it seamless, because I don't think going from CJ Carr to most people is like a seamless transition, but will they be able to play to a high enough level to keep you afloat? That's a question for now. So quarterback, mostly, we're close. But I'm not here to say like definite gap is completely closed. I think that it's a conversation point. Wide receiver, I think you still need another couple years. I really do. I think that you're getting better. And you are still an injury away from Kenny Minchey. But my point there, Joe, is that if you have an injury now and Kenny Minchey's the guy inserted, I feel fine. I think Kenny will come in and do a very good job. My point is, next year, if Kenny's gone and you have to go to Blake or Noah or whatever, how less comfortable are you in that situation? Like, that's kind of my point, right? So that's kind of my point there. Wide receiver, I think you just need a little bit more time. It's getting better. The wide receiver recruiting, especially in the 2026 class, was worlds better than it had been the previous year in 2025. So I think you just need to think you need to stack a little bit more, right? So wide receivers one. And then interior defense line is still the spot where I'm just like, that's not good enough. It's better. It's not bad this year. It's a pretty solid to good group. But I think you still need to find a difference maker or two. I am very high on Elijah Golden. If Elijah Golden can develop physically and get up to about 295, 300 pounds, I think he has star potential. And if other guys like Armel Mukam and those dudes, they develop, I think that you could get there in a couple years. But I do think that when you compare it to other teams in college football, the Georgias, Alabamas, Ohio States, like those types of schools, I think there's still a gap between defensive tackle on the level. So I think that defense tackle is still the spot, because I think that I always think of it like this, and I don't know if this makes sense, IGK. Let me know if this makes sense. My question of gap is, do you have to go to the portal because you need to find a difference maker or not just depth? Like that kind of determines the quality of a room, in my opinion. Like this offseason, I think Notre Dame has to be active in the portal again for defensive tackle. You have to be. Wide receiver, I don't think you have to be as much as you have been, but if there's a wide receiver out there that you want, I think you have to be active in the portal. At offensive line, you don't have to go to the portal. The gap's closed. You don't have to go. At running back, even if you lose Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, as long as the young guys are coming in, like I don't think you have to go to the portal. Quarterback, you don't have to go to the portal except maybe for depth. Like if you want a depth kid to be the backup quarterback, de facto backup quarterback. Like there's some positions where I just say like they have to go and find a guy because I'm not confident enough in that room overall. And defensive tackle's one, wide receiver, one guy is probably the other. Otherwise, and DeJager Jeff just said it's hard to find a D-line in the portal. Well, Notre Dame found a couple quality kids this year, right? I mean, like Jared Dawson's done a good job for Notre Dame. Elijah Hughes has far exceeded my expectations. So I'm not talking about necessarily finding an impact guy in the portal. What I'm talking about is that if you don't recruit that impact guy necessarily, that's going to be a difference maker. You have to overcompensate with depth and quality depth. And the thing that Notre Dame has done this year better, especially when Gabriel Rubio gets back, is that with Gabriel Rubio, Jason Onye, Jared Dawson, Elijah Hughes, Donovan Heinisch, with those five, you have waves of guys you can throw out there that are all solid to good football players. So I think that makes up for not having necessarily one game wrecker. You have a bunch of just good players, which, again, overcompensates a little bit. Let's see. Well, we just had Joe Long said, I like Bryce. In fact, Ryan, when you left IB and went to your own podcast, I suggested you to hook up before, in my opinion, you both know your S. Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate that. I actually, funny enough, I don't know John at all. I would love to be able to get to know John and connect with him. I talked to several other members of the Notre Dame media because I'm obviously not on site, so I don't go to every press conference and all that type of stuff. I only go for, a couple games a year, and I typically try to go to the pro days and stuff like that for like media access and whatnot. But like me not being on site, I don't run into everyone all the time, but I've had the pleasure of talking to, several members of Notre Dame media, and I've had the opportunity to hang out with several members of Notre Dame media, but I've never had the pleasure of meeting John Bryce. So I would love to meet John Bryce at some point because he is, he does very good work for Football Scoop, and then I know he also does the podcast with the Irish Illustrated guys, and they all do a really good job. O'Malley and Priester and all those guys, they're awesome. All right, let's go to Irish Gordy Not again. It says, comparing the health of the team at this point in last year to this year, it's really crazy how much healthier they are. Luck or Lando? I think it's both to a degree, IGK. I think second year under a strength program, I think is just a natural ascension of, or progression, I should say. But I also think that there's some luck involved with injuries, man. Like for anybody that's played football or played a contact sport, like sometimes you just got to be lucky, man. It's just your foot's in one wrong spot, or your foot's a couple too far to the left or too far to the right, and you get rolled up on. Like this stuff happens all the time. So I think it's a combination of both. I'm trying to rapid fire through these a bunch because I spent a lot of time on the first couple questions. I think I needed to because like the playoff conversation, I don't think you just breeze through that in 30 seconds. Like you need to expand upon your opinion. So let's wrap through some. Beefeater said, hello, Ryan. Any rumors on potential portal pickups? A little bit too early, Beefeater. I know some people are jumping in now. I wrote an article about Nick Marsh from Michigan State. I have no idea if that fit would make sense for Notre Dame academically. I don't know if that's a player that they would go after because he's only a true sophomore, and I don't know if admissions would have let him in. Like I don't know. But that's a kid that I would have at least a conversation with and see if there's some way to make it work if he's willing to come play at Notre Dame, because that kid is good. 100 receptions, over 1,300 yards the last 2 years, despite playing on a really poor Michigan State offense. But I will say this, the positions I expect Notre Dame to look at. One wide receiver, maybe. If there's a guy out there, that's a difference. I think that they will bring in a guy because you're losing Malachi Fields, you're going to lose Will Pauling, and then who knows, just natural attrition, the rest of the room with how the transfer portal is. You never know. So I would say a wide receiver you're definitely looking at. Defensive tackle, you're probably looking at multiples because you're going to lose Gabriel Rubio, you're going to lose Jason Onye, you're going to lose Jared Dawson. So you need to find some guys inside. So maybe 2 to 3 defensive tackles potentially in the portal, depending on how things shake out. After that, corner, no. Safety, you're good. Like you're very good at safety. You don't need that. Linebacker, you don't need to. Offensive line, you don't need to. Tight ends, You have two kids coming in, so I think you probably think Bremer might come in and be able to play. And as long as Cooper Flanagan's healthy, you have James Flanagan, you have Jack Larson. I think that Ty Washington, you don't have to go to the portal for a tight end. Kicker, punter, maybe both. Yes, there. So keep your eye on special teams. And this isn't intel on my part, guys. I'm just like projecting what the roster might look like. So I haven't talked to anybody at Notre Dame about what their portal needs are yet, because they're in a pretty important part of this season right now, But yeah, I mean, you have to go for a kicker. Like, even if Eric Schmidt, unless Eric Schmidt goes on like a Linsanity run down the stretch of the season where he just makes like multiple field goals a game and he's nailing things from like 50 plus and he looks like a very good kicker, I think that you have to go for a kicker again. Punter, James Rendell's out after this year. You might have to go for a punter. But other than that, like, there's not much. The interesting one, I have no intel on this, but like, running back, maybe? Question mark. I mean, you're going to lose two excellent running backs. Jabron Payne could be a transfer candidate, possibly. I don't know. Aeneas Williams has been good when he's played, but he hasn't played a ton this year. Nolan James, the staff likes a lot, and you have two good running backs coming in. Are you okay with just sticking with those four and just rolling it out? I'd be fine if they went either way, to be honest, because I think that you can get a lot of. I mean, Aeneas Williams, they could be a really good player on the college level. Nolan James, again, has some fans in that building. Javion Osborne, Jonas Walton. It's really going to come down to, I think, how Coach Sider thinks that those two freshmen will be able to come in and play potentially early. But yeah, that's just kind of some early thoughts and transfer portal stuff. But defensive tackle and one wide receiver is kind of where my thought is right now. All right, let's go to. All right. Love the conversations you guys are having in the chat, by the way. Very much appreciate it. Going to be only a few more minutes here. Let's rock fire. What are the odds the Irish look to get out of the association with the ACC? The way the ACC has gone after them this year has been insane to me. I would, Brendan. I don't know what the odds are. If it was me and there was an out that made sense, I would get out of that allegiance that you have with the ACC. It just doesn't do anything for you, man. I mean, the ACC is dying. It's dying. And I know you have the hope for a deep rivalry with Clemson and everything, where you signed that long-term contract with Clemson and whatnot. But man, I just don't think the affiliation does anything for you in football. In basketball, sure. Like other sports, sure. In football, the ACC is dying. It's dying. And some of the remarks I think are just a little bit like disconcerting, especially because the brand that Notre Dame is, like, they're a big reason that you are sustaining some level of sustainability, even though it's not great football either way. But yeah, I think that it is a conversation that definitely needs to happen for sure. All right, we had, okay. I think we already, Paul Carney basically asked the same question as earlier about moving up Ole Miss. I agree. I don't think Ole Miss should have been moved up for sure. I think that they should have been stagnated or maybe moved down a spot. But yeah, I'm okay with them being in the field though, because we don't have any proof of concept to how much they're going to be hurt by those defections. Beefeater says, Ryan, is it true that James Franklin is going to save the ACC? Allegedly. If you have James Franklin behind closed doors, I'm sure that he is going to save the ACC. Saying in jest, obviously, I have no idea what James Franklin thinks. I think Virginia Tech's actually a good spot for him. I think it's a really good spot for him. He's already recruiting at a pretty nice level compared to what Virginia Tech usually does. So I think it's a good spot for him. But I don't think many people would be able to save the ACC, Beefeater. So it's just a dying conference right now, man. Absolutely dying. We had Dinar Curry, 3920, says, Ryan, which wide receiver could play as a freshman? I think that Caden Finley could play as a freshman. Without question. No doubt about it. Devin Fitzgerald physically could probably play as a freshman, but I don't know if he'll be ready to make an impact per se. Braden Robinson could play as a freshman if you just want to give him some design touches. Like if you want to give him a jet sweep occasionally and end rounds, let him contribute on special teams, maybe he could be a guy. And I feel similarly to Bubba Frazier. So if I had to pick two guys that I think are most likely to play as freshmen, it would actually be, might surprise some, it'd be Caden Finley, which would not be a surprise. The other one would be Bubba Frazier. I think that Bubba Frazier could actually compete as a freshman at Notre Dame. Again, in a simplified role. He's not going to be a guy that's going to have like 30 catches for 500 yards as a freshman. But if he's a guy that, again, if you give a jet sweep to, you throw a screen to, maybe he's a punt returner, I think that he could be a guy that could play a little bit. But I think Caden Finley is number one. Wait, Greg Gosser asked Gabriel Rubio coming back. Yes, Greg. When Marcus Freeman spoke to the media a couple weeks ago, he did say that Gabriel Rubio will be back for the playoffs. So he will be back for the playoffs. As for an extra year, I believe he is out of eligibility after this year. So, but he will be back for the playoffs for hopefully another playoff run. Wade Garrett, says, "Hey Ryan, hope all is well." It is Wade. I hope you are doing well as well. Who do you think the most underrated player in the class is? Just joining, so sorry if you have talked about this already. It's okay, Wade. Yeah, someone did ask about this, so just kind of quick. Most underrated, I think offensively, it's Dylan Faison. I think that he's, just because his process was really short, and he's kind of viewed as a legacy of sorts for Notre Dame with his brother. Like, I think he's a little bit underrated. Very different athlete. I think defensively, Jacoby Clapper would probably be the guy. Him or Chaston Smith are, I think, two of the most underrated players in the 2026 recruiting class. All right, we had Michael Domenico. Excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, Michael. Truly apologize. This is terrible, and they did not offer a good answer about the direction. They treat Notre Dame like they are the Yankees, but Notre Dame puts people in the seats. And that's why I tend to think that Notre Dame's going to make the playoffs a little bit. I mean, I think there is that logo thing is real, man. And Michael, I think that's my biggest frustration is I'm okay with decisions swaying back and forth as long as you give me a good explanation. Good explanation can cure all. The fact that there's just like it's very shallow perspective, and also I think it's inconsistent handling of questions that kind of are just like, I don't know if their process is great. And if anybody knows me, I'm a big process over results guy most of the time. You need results, but good process usually leads to good results. And if you have if you have a good process, but it's not getting results, then you need to change your process. So it all comes down to the process to begin with. Bernie says, any news on recruiting? Well, I think Notre Dame's got, actually, I don't want to say it like that. I would expect more continued good news on the Notre Dame recruiting trail over the next few weeks. That's all I'll say. I think there's, obviously, Notre Dame has had a couple commitments pretty recently, and I don't see that stopping. I think Notre Dame is in a good spot with several players that I will continue to write about, that they're in a good spot with them. So, yes, Notre Dame will have good news on the recruiting trail for the 2027 class for the foreseeable future. We had Luke Breeding who said, your thoughts on 2027 wide receiver Rob Larson. I haven't watched Rob a ton, and he's out of Folsom, California. For people that don't know, he was the kid that went to Irish Invasion this past year and balled out. He's blown up a little bit. He's got a pretty good developing offer list. He's been back to Notre Dame once for a game visit this year. So we'll see if something comes of that. But I don't know if he's he's definitely not a priority necessarily for Notre Dame yet, because he's hasn't been offered yet by Notre Dame. But we'll see if that changes. But he's played well for Folsom. Has put up some good numbers with Ryder Lyons as quarterback. So we'll see if that changes. What is my take on the USF hiring, the South Florida hiring? That's from B. Hart. It's very weird. For people that didn't see this one, wide receiver coach Brian Hartline from Ohio State is taking over. He's offensive coordinator for Ohio State by title. He's taking over USF. I don't know what to make about it, man. He was rumored to at least be interviewing potentially for Penn State. I haven't had that verified on my end, but like, there's been a couple of jobs that he's at least been mentioned with as a wild card type of candidate. I don't know what to make of it, to be honest. I mean, South Florida has ended up being it just was a stepping stone for a former Tennessee offensive coordinator and Alex Golesh to get the Auburn job. So I guess you can look at it as a stepping stone job. But I kind of thought that Brian Hartline would wait it out for a bigger job than that, to be honest. Like, I don't know. It felt like I'm going to call it impulsive because I don't know Brian Hartline, so I don't want to say it was an impulsive decision, but it did feel like a decision that kind of came out of nowhere a little bit. So he's gambling to a degree. I mean, I guess he's hoping it's a stepping stone job, but we'll see if it works out or not. We will see. All right, we had Brendan McGuire says, are there any defensive tackles jumping in the portal that will have interest in, or is it too early to tell? There's definitely going to be some that they're going to have interest in. They have to go to the portal for defensive tackle. I don't have any names for you yet, Brendan, but give it time. More kids are starting to jump into the portal. I'll probably have some like intel stuff over the next like maybe in like 2 or 3 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark. There will definitely be more conversation for sure. Just wanted to bring this one up real quick from Beefeater. If we do not get into the college football playoff, which bowl game are we going to sign up for and rename the Disappointment Bowl? I have no idea. I do not care about bowl games anymore, which is so sad to say because when I was a kid, man, I used to love bowl games, man. Ah, my gosh, I used to remember like leading up to Christmas and right after the New Year. Like, man, bowl games are so much fun, dude. It's just not that same anymore. So it really is. It's really unfortunate how the game has gone a little bit in some capacities. I think it's gone right in some ways, wrong in some others. I mean, it's just one of those things where you're just never going to be completely happy with the product, but it's still college football, and we're still going to watch every Saturday. BVR said, hit that thumbs up for my guy Ryan. Yes, thank you. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Right. Bernie just said, Price should come back and chase down a Heisman behind next year's ridiculous offensive line. If he wanted to, would not say no, obviously, like if Jadari Price wanted to come back. But Bernie, for people that don't know me too well, like I've just always been an advocate for if you're a running back and you have a decent draft grade, go as early as you possibly can. Because the tread on the tires, the shelf life is so much smaller for a running back. Go get paid because the opportunity to potentially get to a second contract is scarce for a running back in general. And I always recommend those guys go into the draft early if they can. All right. So we had the Ozzy family who said Anthony Poindexter would be a great add to Freeman's staff if he could get him. Of course, he's the secondary coach for Penn State, and he's a very good coach. I just don't know how you would make that work. I mean, we have no idea what's going to happen in the offseason with coaches leaving for other jobs and all that type of stuff. So who knows? The Jayer just says, does BK coach again? I'm going to say no. As of now, I could be completely wrong about this, but the man is in his 60s. The man is chilling on a lot of money. I think he'll just chill. I could be wrong, but I think he'll just chill. All right. We had Joe Long says, well, Ryan, when you have a team in ACC to play for a conference championship, they're 7-5. Just that fact alone should exclude a team from ACC getting in. Virginia beating them means what? And again, Virginia, 19th ranked Virginia. No, I would be okay with them at least if we're changing the format of the playoff a little bit. So I know we're going to expand here again, but if we want to cut down the number of automatic qualifiers for conference play, I'd be okay with it. We would at least get rid of this problem for the short term of like, why are we putting this team in? Why are we putting this team in right now? All right. Beefeater says, everyone please vote for Jadarian Price for the Paul Hornung Award once a day. Yes, if you want to go vote for him, that would be very appreciated, I'm sure, by the Jadarian Price family and all the support that he has in the award potentially. Holiday Everyday says, Mailbag, do you think they are talking to Mark Edwards' son yet? Talking to Mark Edwards' son, yes. Will they pursue Mark Edwards' son? Of course, this is Xander, who plays at the Bowles School in Jacksonville, Florida. I don't know. Would I go after Xander Edwards? Yes. Do I think that Notre Dame's going to go after Xander Edwards seriously? I have my doubts. This reminds me of Actually, I don't even want to go there. I'm sorry. We'll talk about this in the future. But I think that Xander Edwards is a guy that Notre Dame is probably not going to prioritize right now. He's a 2028 kid, so he's got time, and this could very much will change. But as of today, I have my doubts if they do take a deep look at, or if they take make a push for Xander Edwards, I should say. All right. This is from Daniel Burns, says, narrative last year for media was best teams get in over metrics. It seems to switch based on a bubble teams they want in this year. I think everyone changes their formulas depending on how they want their favorite team to get in every single year. I think it's going to happen. I think that everything should be a part of the conversation. I don't think it should just be, eye test. I don't think it should just be metrics. I think that it should be a combination, but unfortunately it is not. All right. Joe Long says if he's playing like anything like his dad, go get him. Well, Xander is putting up a crazy season for bowl school. He said he broke Derrick Henry's state record for rushing yards in a game. He ran for over 500 yards in a single game. Man, that's really good. Call me Ty, 6:55. I'm going to end this one, folks. I got to get some writing to get done today. I said, I've been watching clips of Jamarcus Shepard at Oregon State. How did we hire Chancey Stuckey over him? That is a Tommy Rees decision. That was. Marcus Freeman gave Tommy Rees the autonomy and the inputs into helping to hire the offensive staff. And Tommy liked Chancey Stuckey. So they hired Chancey Stuckey. So, yeah, it was a mistake. It was a mistake. Beefeater says, when do NFL grades come in? So in the preseason, the spring grades are out like April, May, somewhere in that ballpark. The grades for the 2026 NFL draft class are being finalized now. So right in the middle of November until this end of the season, the NFL grades will be finalized for just the film. And then after that, then the next layer of like character reports, meeting with teams, athletic testing, like all that stuff is put into the buckets of a draft evaluation, but they're finishing up their film grades now on the NFL side. All right, folks, I think we're going to end it there. A little bit over an hour for you all. Hope you appreciated it. I appreciate you. And if you could do me one more solid, hit that like and subscribe to the channel before you get out. If you are live with us on Facebook, make sure that you are following the page. But if you can go over to YouTube, just search A to Z Sports Notre Dame. Hit that like button, subscribe there. If you're on Facebook or on Twitter, same deal. If you want to go over to YouTube, would really much appreciate that. Thank you all so much. We'll be talking probably Sunday night about the final bracket and everything involved. But for now, folks, hope everybody has a great week. And as always, go Irish.